Joe Burrow, 15-0 last year with LSU, Heisman Trophy, national champion, presumptive number 1 overall pick. But, Big Cat, there have been some breadcrumbs in recent days. It began with Carson Palmer saying that Joe Burrow shouldn't want to play for the Bengals because the Bengals aren't trying to win a Super Bowl. Standing alone, that was a little bit alarming. But then when you follow that with Jordan Palmer, Carson's brother, working directly with Burrow to get him ready for the draft, that becomes a little alarming. And then when Burrow's on Dan Patrick's show last week, and Burrow had previously said, I want to play for anyone who will pay me to play for them. On DP's show, he said, I want to play for a team that's committed to winning. It all comes together as what could be a potential power play, the first time since 2004 with Eli Manning, the second time since John Elway with the Colts when they were in Baltimore in 1983, that a guy who is presumed to be the first overall pick in the draft would try to finagle his way away from the team that holds that pick. And when you look at those various little pieces, I think it's obvious he's at least thinking about whether or not he can talk his way out of being the next quarterback of the Bengals.
And wouldn't you? That's really the takeaway from this story. We always have these type of stories. I mean, it hasn't happened, like you said, since Eli Manning. But if you're the Bengals and you even have a rumor of this story, and I think Joe Burrow will go play wherever he gets drafted, and he'll be a great franchise quarterback, and he'll probably win a Super Bowl. I'll say it right now. He'll probably win a Super Bowl, even if it is with the Bengals. But if you are the Bengals and you hear these rumors and you see these stories, don't you have just one moment of introspection and be like, hey, you know what? Like, what's wrong with us? The fact that this is even an idea that a player of Joe Burrow's caliber could say, I don't want to go here because you guys don't want to win. Like, if someone said that about me, if I was the owner or the GM or the coach of an organization and someone said that about me, I'd have a big moment where I step back and say, hey, we got to figure out what we're doing and why it is wrong and change everything that we're doing, because you can't have guys come into the draft and say, yeah, I don't want to go play there because that place is a joke.
Yeah, but Big Cat, that ship sailed 9 years ago, because when Carson Palmer quit on the Bengals, he didn't retire. He quit on the Bengals. Even though he didn't come out and say the same things he said last week, it was obvious from the context, his actions, and reports that emerged at the time that he'd had enough, that's it. I've reached my lifetime limit of playing for this organization, and it is well established in league circles that Mike Brown, the owner of the team, really doesn't care about winning a Super Bowl. He cares about making as much money as he can, spending as little as he can to increase the profit margin, and that's the reputation the Bengals have had for years. And Peter King was on earlier this week. The first team he covered out of college was the Cincinnati Bengals once he was on an NFL beat. He said Mike Brown will tell Joe Burrow, go sit and rot like he did to Carson Palmer. You know, if Jason Campbell doesn't break his collarbone 2 days before the trade deadline in 2011 and the Raiders don't turn around and give up way too much to get Carson Palmer from the Bengals, there's a chance the guy never would have played again, because Mike Brown's attitude was then, and very well may be now, hey, Joe Burrow, you don't like it, we're drafting you. If you don't want to show up, don't show up.
All right, so with everything you just said, maybe Joe Burrow should pull an Eli Manning, because it's just crazy to me that you can have an NFL franchise and have that attitude. And I understand what you're saying, because you see it all the time with owners. They don't care about winning. They just want to make money. But wouldn't a smart person say, hey, you know what will make you more money? Winning more games. Having a team that people are excited about. Having a team that people want to buy jerseys and go to the games and spend money and all those things. It seems like that would make sense, but Mike Brown maybe doesn't have a brain in his skull and he can't figure that out. I don't know. You tell me.
I don't know that they've gone that far down the chain of logic. It's just been a very simple process throughout the 20 years I've been doing this, that the Bengals are the outlier that really aren't interested in being as good as they can be. Now, they had 5 straight playoff appearances. That's great, but they haven't won a playoff game since January of 1991. And, you know, a couple of years ago, the year the Broncos won the Super Bowl, it came down to like a week 15 or 16 Monday night game when A.J. McCarron was playing quarterback for the Bengals, and the game went to overtime. And if the Bengals had won that game, the complexion of the postseason in 2015 would have been very different. But for the most part, this has not been a team that we look at and say this is a high-end contender that is on its way potentially to a Super Bowl. But look, And people have pushed back against this notion on Twitter by reciting the playoff appearances and the one-loss record over the past 20 years. Bottom line is, if Carson Palmer is willing to put his name to this belief that the Bengals aren't trying to win a Super Bowl, I got no basis for disagreeing with the guy who was with the team for nearly a decade and lived it every single day and played with two teams after that he could compare them to the vibe in Cincinnati. So, yeah, if Joe Burrow's my kid, I'm trying to work a way for the Dolphins to trade up and get him so he doesn't have to deal with that question of being drafted by the Bengals and maybe sitting out a full year and re-entering the draft. Because I don't think if push comes to shove, Joe Burrow is walking away from nearly $30 million fully guaranteed and sitting out a year and maybe not being the first overall pick after somebody else emerges as the presumptive number one in 2021.
So I guess the last question I have for you, Mike, about this is Joe Burrow the type of quarterback that can change the entire culture of a franchise, of a team? I think he is. I honestly do. You know, and I'm obviously a little biased because we've had him on our show a couple times, and I've had a chance to sit down with him. I just see it in him, and I've been around a lot of guys where you just see something special, that it factor, where he will be that leader, that galvanizing force for a franchise. So if you're Joe Burrow, Joe Burrow's dad, if you're saying to yourself, hey, you know what, the Bengals, an organization that isn't committed to winning, but they've never had a Joe Burrow. And if you believe in yourself, maybe Joe Burrow changes all that because they then say, we have this guy, we have this huge chip, we have a guy who can be a franchise quarterback. Let's build around that. Let's spend some money, and that can kind of change the complexion of how the Bengals do business.
Possibly. But I will say this. I have immense respect for the fact that you have full and complete transparency, that you essentially can be bought, that your friendship can be bought. Come on my show, and I'm your friend. Don't come on my show, and I'm not your friend, and I won't be your friend until you come on my show. Then I'm your friend.
You know who benefits from that policy more than any single person in this world? You're looking right at him. Mike Florio. If Mike Florio wasn't a friend of mine, I would be ripping him to shreds every which way. Every day, twice on Sunday, you would be getting it from me. And it would be easy. You would have blocked me years ago. So if you want to criticize that policy, go ahead. But just remember who that helps most, and that's Michael P. Florio.
Let me tell you this. If this is how you treat me and I'm your friend, I can only imagine what it would be like if I wasn't your friend. I contemplate blocking you every Friday during the show. So
ask Schefter. Ask Schefter. I've been all up in that business for a long time with Shefty.
Yeah, let's not go down there this morning. There's some fresh developments in that feud that we don't want to spend any time on the show because the audience doesn't care. They do care about this, though. Joe Burrow has to at least be contemplating the possibilities. And I'll tell you this, and Big Cat, I am very leery of pre-draft rumor. Everybody's got an agenda. Everybody's got an angle. So many smoke screens. I rarely traffic in that stuff anymore. But I know for a fact, and the only reason I mention it is because I know it for a fact, Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, wants Joe Burrow. And I assume, I don't know, but I assume Burrow's camp is aware of that. That becomes a factor in this as well. If you know that you can, with a little pressure, with a little awkwardness for the Bengals, with a little of that introspection that may cause them to say, why do we want this guy if he doesn't want to be here? I mean, that's the thing. You want your quarterback to want to be there. He's got to be all in. He's got to be the team leader. He's got to show up early and stay late. He's got to be fully engaged. If he's got any hesitation, that's not good for the team. Maybe this is laying the foundation for the Dolphins to make a deal. They got plenty of draft capital. Chris Greer, the GM, has said so himself within the past couple of weeks. Make the move up to number one and get Joe Burrow. It wouldn't shock me if that's what Burrow is hoping for. And if it doesn't happen and the Bengals draft him, you make chicken salad, or at least you try to. But I think they'd like the Dolphins to move up to number one and take him.
So then what happens to Tua?
Well, I don't know. Maybe Tua goes to the Bengals at 5. Maybe they keep Andy Dalton for one more year, right? Keep Andy Dalton for one more year. Cheap contract, under $20 million for Andy Dalton for one more year. Let Tua sit on the bench like they did with Carson Palmer when John Kitna was the starting quarterback, and then Tua's your guy in 2021.
I mean, if they keep Andy Dalton for another year, they really are the dumbest organization that's ever been created, because they benched Andy Dalton last year. They said we're moving on from Andy Dalton, and that was Like, Andy Dalton was clearly their best quarterback option last year, and they put him on the bench. So I guess that would make perfect sense. So what you just said is exactly what's going to happen because it is the Bengals. So they will trade the pick, take Tua, and have Andy Dalton be the quarterback next year and have everything be very weird. And you know what will happen? Andy Dalton will somehow win 10 games, and everyone will tell themselves, hey, maybe Andy Dalton is the answer for the quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals.
5 straight playoff appearances for Andy Dalton to start his career with the Bengals. And let me just say one thing before we break. For whatever reason, Peter King on this program and elsewhere, I assume, has linked Andy Dalton to the Patriots enough times that it made me say to Peter during a break the other day, you're saying this so much, I feel like you know something. He says he doesn't know anything, but how about Andy Dalton as the New England Patriots next quarterback? What do you think of that?
I mean, wouldn't it be the ultimate Belichick to figure out a way to win a Super Bowl with Andy Dalton? Like, that would be incredible. It would be incredible theater to watch.
That's the ultimate proof that it's Belichick, not Brady. If you can bring in a guy who's middle of the pack at best and win a Super Bowl, what does that say about Brady? I kind of like the possibilities. I mean, we're going to talk later in the program. Our draft is predictions of things that will happen this offseason. I just don't think enough people have emerged from the presumption that he's definitely going to stay with the Patriots. I think that there's a good chance he won't be, and that would make for a crazy 2020. We're going to take a break.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.